Hello, everyone. It's Jennie and Laurie of AstroPath. And thank you for being here today. We're going to talk about the full moon, the Gemini full moon that's coming up on Wednesday, December
7th.
7th. Do you know what time that new moon is at? I mean, full moon? Geez.
11:08 p.m. So pretty
11.
late.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Late on Wednesday. Okay. So that's what we're here to talk about. Before we dive into this, if you are not following us, please do so and share, make comments, do whatever you can to help us out here. So with that being said, let's dive into this conversation about the full moon.
Sounds good. Let's start with the cycle, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to go ahead with that?
I'll start out talking about the cycle. Sure. The lunar cycle is a 28-day cycle. It is the cycle of everything in life. It is the cycle of birth, growth, full illumination, the breakdown, death, and then starting over. Everything goes the same, has that same cycle, everything in life. So the way it works, most of you probably know this, but some of you might not. The new moon is when you go out and it's dark outside. It's very, very dark. That is when the moon is in between us here on Earth and the sun. Therefore, when we're outside at night, we can't see the moon because it's on the other side with the sun. So that's when we think of it sort of as like the plant cycle. This is a time to plant a seed. So you plant a seed at metaphorically, you plant a seed at the new moon. A week later, we come to the first quarter moon, which we think of as this is the time to really take action on supporting the growth of that seed. A week after that first quarter moon, we come to the full moon. That's the full illumination. That is when the sun is on one side of us, the moon is on the other. So the moon has the full reflection, and we see that great, big, beautiful moon when we go out at night. A week after the full moon, well, one other thing about the full moon. The full moon is a time when we can make an adjustment as far as we can really see clearly how the growth of the plant seed that we planted at the new moon, we can see how it's grown over the last 2 weeks, and we can make adjustments. And then a week after that full moon, we come to the last quarter phase of the moon, which is really when things are breaking down. It's time to take action to begin letting go of the cycle, which the cycle will end a week after that at the following new moon. Did I get all that right, Jennie?
Yeah, that sounded good. That was a nice description.
Is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I think we should jump into the next part of the talk here.
Okay, so the only other thing I do want to say, we've got the most recent new moon, the one that this is the full moon of, happened on, let's see, November 23rd.
Yeah.
That was the Sagittarius new moon. And then the other thing, when you think of this as there's the 28-day cycle, there's also the full year cycle. So this is the full moon that relates back to the Gemini new moon on May 30th. That happened on May 30th, 2022. So you can track both of those cycles. It's kind of an overlap of these two cycles. Right.
Yeah. And I like when you do that because you can think about two different seeds that you planted. And sometimes life doesn't move as quickly in these 1 month increments. Sometimes in your life really do, and other times not so much. But those 6 month cycles can give you really good information about your kind of overall development over time. So I really like that.
Yeah, it's really good. When you're thinking about this, especially when we get into the part where we're doing the individual impact determined by your rising sign, it's really good to think back. What was going on there in the end of May? What was it that began then that is now really illuminating in the house where the full moon is? You can really get some good information from that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, thinking in terms of these cycles is just super helpful. So yeah.
Yeah. And if I would really encourage people to have a lunar phase notebook where they can really track this over the course of time. That's when you really start seeing how real and powerful this is to watch it over the course of time and really track it.
Yeah, I mean, that makes me think of, Laurie, I just want to add one more thing, which is just that this is our most ancient calendar. I mean, this is the thing that enabled you to track time, or enabled people to track time. So I think it's kind of just a reminder, like we're not doing anything brand new here. This is just a reminder of our original calendar that everything is really based on. Yeah. So I like that. It's fun to think about.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I mean, when you really understand Western astrology is, time is tracked by the planet, the movement of the planets.
Yeah. And time is the fourth dimension. So, it's all right there. It's not even that woo-woo when you really get down to it.
No, it's really not.
It's actually pretty practical. Yeah. I guess the next thing we should talk about is Gemini, right? So this full moon is in Gemini. So that means this is the sign that's opposite Sagittarius. We're bang in the middle of Sagittarius season pretty much. So Gemini is sort of a response to that Sagittarius fire. Gemini is an air sign. It's mutable. So it's this, I always think of it as this little sprite dancing around, like gathering up information and transmitting it off somewhere else. It's mainly about carrying information. It's not a super deep sign, though it's really important when you think about it. If you're carrying information, the first step is listening to the other person to even gather the information. So there's a huge piece about listening and then taking that information and delivering it and talking with someone else or passing along that information. I think there's a lot of depth in just the simple idea of listen and then be able to repeat what is being said or have your own opinion. So I think it's really important. Gemini is very curious, and that is probably one of the highest manifestations of this curiosity of zipping around and being really interested in what it's doing. And that is a really nice thing about Gemini.
Yeah, Gemini is an interesting sign because it does tend to be kind of light and move quickly. But its job is to gather information. What it does with that information later, that's a whole nother conversation. But this is really about gathering that information. And, people with a strong Gemini in their charts, there's often that idea that they talk a lot. Well, people with a strong Gemini, if they are really functioning at a higher level, like you said, they're doing a lot more listening. Because what they figure out is if the job of Gemini is to gather information, every single person we meet has a lot of information. So if all that's done is talking, then you're really just spewing information, not gathering.
Yeah, and that's such an appropriate symbol for the times, right? Where there's so much talking and blasting each other on the internet or all these different things, but it's doing the very immature version of Gemini, which is actually, immaturity is the kind of darker side of Gemini,
right?
Like that gossipy, shallow, I'm just going to throw some gossip out and like kind of create more ire rather than passing along information in a positive way.
A more mature expression of Gemini is that ability to listen and to actually take in information and then figure out what to do with it from there. But Gemini is an interesting sign. It's very adaptable and quick moving.
And as far as archetypes, it does have the archetype of the teacher. This is the teacher delivering the information to the next generation. So passing on information, really important. It also holds the archetype of the networker, which is pretty easy to envision. But I also like to think of it as the storyteller too. I know we've talked about that, where it is, once it's gathers information, now it's sharing experience, it's doing the other end of it and telling it as a story. Story is one of the fastest ways to develop empathy for somebody else. Like when you actually hear their story, it might be someone you completely disagree with, but because you know their story, they're relatable. And so I think that is where the power of Gemini is. And that's what a lot of the focus is right now with the full moon.
Yeah.
Mars. So let's crack open that chart. What do you say?
All right, let's look at the chart and see what we're looking at. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, because this full moon is exactly conjunct Mars, which is retrograde. And that's probably the biggest thing that you can't help but notice right away, right?
Yep, it is exact too. 16 degrees Gemini. The Mars is right there, right opposite the sun, with the moon and Mars right there. Look at that. That's so interesting. You know, one of the things, if you think about the new moon, was when the moon obviously was down here with that Sagittarius sun.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, what you can see, that's right. You can't see when I just pointed that, can you, Jennie?
No, I don't know if you can on the video,
okay.
but I can't.
So, yeah. So what we're looking at is we had that new moon, and since then the moon has gone over. If we think about the journey of the moon and the moon as gathering up the energy of each planet as it moves along, it has gone over every single planet, and now it's meeting up with Mars while Mars is retrograde. So it's kind of brought everything to Mars. And Mars is coming back to grab hold of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting thing to think about it that way.
Yeah, I mean, the thing to think about too is interesting because Mars is the planet of action. So it can be incredibly inflammatory, but it also can be the thing that, you know, gets the project going. It makes the thing happen. It's both of those things. So either way, I think you can think of it as a trigger. Yeah. It helps trigger events for better or for worse, right? So and retrograde, it's been retrograde for quite a while now, since October 30th. And it's been in Gemini for a long time, Mars, that is. Yeah. And it's not going to come out of retrograde until mid-January, and it's still going to be in Gemini all the way into March. So this is a longer statement about communication. And I just keep thinking about, look at our world and look at all the things about communication. And we have more and more ways to communicate, yet it seems like good communication happens less and less often. It's almost like it's been so scattered, which is another kind of Gemini thing to think about, that it's hard to have good communication, you know? And so I think that in a lot of ways, the astrology as I see it in especially the last 6 months, but even longer, is all about communication. Is what is our communication? How are we doing it? What do we need to do differently? Like, how can we take a pause? That's the retrograde part, slow down and think about it.
Yeah. And reworking those ideas, reworking what we're telling ourselves, rewriting the story, which is, we talked a lot about when we made the Mars retrograde video. We talked a lot about wherever Mars is in your chart as an area of life that needs to be rewritten. We really need to be rewriting the story of how we speak to each other, how we listen to each other. Maybe we're all just speaking too damn much and it's time to listen.
Yeah. And this might be a chattier video because I had to poke fun at us a little bit. But yeah, I think all these things are really important to tune into.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and then I think the only other things that to note about this is that the planet Mercury does rule Gemini, and so it is helpful looking at the condition of Mercury in this chart. And what is very notable is that Mercury is recently separated from the beams of the sun. That means that you can actually see it in the sky. You can see it in the evening sky. And it's in Capricorn, so it's out of that inflammatory Sagittarius space. It's in this much calmer, cooler, collected space of Earth, and there's a lot more grounding to it. So I think that is very helpful.
Yeah, and it's a lot more serious. It's a lot more serious. I mean, it's been with the sun and with Venus there in Sagittarius, kind of making fun of itself in some ways, and now it has moved into Capricorn. It's like, okay, we need to be serious about whatever it is that we are worked up about with that Mars and Moon conjunction in Gemini.
It also invites just kind of a reach towards integrity, like make sure that
Yes.
it
Oh, thank
allows
you
you
for
to slow
saying
down
that.
a little bit. Yeah, it's just making sure, checking in inside. Is this what I really want to say? Is this how I want to say it? Is now the right time to say this? That kind of thing, that little pause that can help you think that through.
Yeah.
Because the only other thing about this chart is there's quite a bit of Pisces as well that plays in, and Pisces just brings a fogginess to the whole thing. And so you may not be clear. You might think that you're clear, but you may not be clear. And that can be both a terrible thing, but it can be a good thing too. The important piece, I think, is just knowing that something that might have been clear 10 minutes ago suddenly isn't clear. And that's okay. That's part of what's happening. As long as you know, it allows you to just be a little softer and tap more into the whole mutable situation here, which is be willing to dance a little bit more of the energy instead of being stuck in your ways.
Yeah, it's interesting as you're saying that. I'm kind of relating this to stuff that's going on in my own mind. But it is a time when it's really worth allowing yourself to question yourself. Question the assumptions, the stories that you've been telling yourself forever, or for 6 months, or since that Sagittarius new moon in May. Some issues that you've been telling yourself a certain story, you might really need to adjust that in a bigger way than just things are not as they appear to be. That's one of the things I remember thinking, with Neptune, things are not as they appear to be. Where can you allow yourself to question what you've been telling yourself? You're not stuck with the story you've been telling yourself. Sometimes it's very difficult to come out from under a story that you've been telling yourself and you've been telling everybody around you. It's like all of a sudden you have to admit, oh, well, I know that was a big deal, but I've changed my mind.
Yeah.
It's okay to change your mind.
Yeah, Laura, I think you're very right about this situation where you might quickly glance at this thing and go, oh gosh, this piercing clarity and there's a decision that needs to be made now. But when you look at the chart a little deeper, it's absolutely not saying that. It's more saying, hey, hold on, look within, because actually the one thing that is clear is that nothing's that clear. There's a little bit of that. I like that kind of, there is an inward question being posed by this chart, despite us being in Sagittarius season, which is so outward. This is an important time to look within. So,
all right.
Okay. Right. Anything else?
I don't think so. I think that's everything we need to talk about with that. And are we ready to move into the individual impacts?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, Jenny. So here we are with the individual impacts. And for those of you who have Aries rising, this is putting the full moon in your third house of communication. So with the full moon and Mars coming together here in this area, what are you encountering in your life around communication? And where are you possibly feeling very frustrated or very passionate about what it is you have to say?
Yeah, because all season you've had the opportunity to work on that Mars being in the third house, but now with the moon there, it's sort of giving you a full test about how you've been handling things here, because the moon's going to bring in a lot more volatile emotions into this place. So now is the time to really tune in to exactly what Laurie is saying here. Like, is there a sense of frustration and anger, or is there more a passion, or perhaps some of both? But that's the question to ask yourself. And if it is more on the anger side of things, it's worth looking at, okay, well, let's look at some root causes. Why? What's happening? What's the frustration about? And also to use where that Sagittarius sun is falling to bring a little more humor and lightheartedness into your interactions, rather than just your opinions, right?
Right. Right. I think about that. It's like, you've got this story that you've been trying to rewrite in that area about how you communicate. And yeah, the volatility of your emotions coming into play, and finding, really understanding what it is you're experiencing here. Is it an experience of frustration and anger, or is it an experience of passion around what you have to say?
Yeah. And then one other piece to help you maybe give you more information is there a place where you're being very opinionated about your worldview? Because that might be the thing. If you're really tightly holding on to something that's your opinion about the way the world is, and you're trying to communicate that to other people, that actually might be the source of frustration, because it's a little bit of a mirroring going on here with a full moon. You're always going to have these two places being activated. So that's the other way to kind of chase down some answers for yourself.
Yeah, what the story is, and the frustration or the passion is directly connected to your worldview. So it's a very individual story for you, because it's coming through from your worldview. So again, to bring in what we were saying in the earlier part of the video, rather than just talking, listen. Try to turn down the tone of your own opinions and listen. And don't let go of your passion about your beliefs or whatever, but tone down some of the aggravation of how you use that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's go on to those of you who have Taurus rising. And for you, this full moon, this Gemini full moon, falls in your second house, which is the area of your resources, your personal values, your self-worth, money, and resources. That's what that second house is about. So you're going to want to really be thinking about how it's been going this whole period of time. You've been kind of working on rewriting the story about that with Mars retrograde. And if you haven't listened to our Mars retrograde video, please do so, because there's a lot more information there about rewriting your story in this area of your values.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the thing to do is tune in to how intense feelings, because that's really what's showing you. Those intense feelings might be frustration. They might be in the second house. They could be on the negative end of things, like some pretty intense, like self-loathing types of feelings. And those really get your attention when you're feeling those. Or it could be something that you're feeling really passionate about, that really goes well with your values, and that you feel are really important. And with the moon in there, it's just heightening sensitivity and emotions about whatever this thing is. And I think then the question to ask yourself as well is to look at, is there a way that I am judging other people and how they're handling their values, or is that healthy for you? Are you feeling like you're being able to kind of witness and perhaps support people as they're dealing with their stuff? So find out about that. Like, which one are you doing? One of those two things? How is that playing into your overall story? Because there's a connection. If you are judging other people, it really very likely comes from some way in which you're not really okay with yourself. And if you're able to be really supportive and helpful to other people and their stuff, then maybe there's a way you need to be a little kinder to yourself. I mean, the interplay, and depending on your personal story, you're probably resonating with some part of this or some other part. Just think about that.
Yeah, there's some connection here between other people's values. This could have to do with money or other resources, but there's some way in which, there's aggravation around your own values. There may be some resentment about what other people have that you don't have. That would be a common way. And so, to really kind of flip that story on its head, instead of holding on to that resentment, to really find a piece inside of you where you can be passionately supportive of what other people have. not an easy game, but this is about rewriting the story about your own values and your own self-worth.
Yeah. And it could be also sometimes about something you're doing with spending money. I mean, spending habits also lives in this house. So this could also be some way that you're, this plays into that story too. So it's the same thing. If you think somebody else has more than you and you're doing the less than story, but you also might be overspending.
Well, the fact that we are just approaching this holiday where an awful lot of people overspend, this could really be very much about this particular period of time and what you're spending and what people expect and all of that. That's
so good time to tune in to those intense feelings, right?
Tune into them, find your own passionate values, and rewrite that story. You don't have to do it the way you've always done it. It is about rewriting it. Okay, so now we're going to move on to those of you with Gemini rising. And this brings the full moon certainly into a very personal place because it's right there in your first house. This is about you. So, for this period of time, since I think it was August when Mars actually moved into Gemini, and it's been retrograde since October 30th. So you've been working on that whole idea of rewriting the story of you. And right now, this is kind of a testing ground, as I think you were saying earlier, Jennie, of how are you doing with that? How's that process going? And what is your frustration, aggravation, or where are you feeling really passionate about the change that you're making in how you present yourself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think of this as having Mars in that first house. That's so motivating. Mm-hmm. So there's some way in which you are communicating something about yourself. It might be something that you're developing in yourself, some way of using your voice that you are developing and working a lot on. But the thing to really tune into is, as Laurie, as you're saying here, is it frustration and irritation, or is it more like passion and excitement? And if you're landing more on the irritation phase, ask yourself why, and ask, what is it that you could maybe twist a little bit to turn it more into something that you're using or applying yourself to with passion, because that's going to be ultimately more productive. It's going to be better for your health, which is very important in the first house as well. So those are things to think about. And then also the other undeniable part is how, if you have a partner, or whether it's a business partner or your marriage, or even somebody you're interacting with on a one-on-one basis from day to day, like, is there something this is part of? Like, is there a way in which that partnership is playing out that's either elevating your infuriation, hopefully not, or allowing you to kind of express that kind of heat in a really fun way? There's different ways it could play out.
I was thinking also, just in terms of like rewriting the story of who you are with that Mars retrograde there in the first house, maybe there's stuff that you realize you have not expressed fully to your partner. And that this could be a real opportunity to do so in a new way. To really show yourself more authentically. Interesting.
And in classical psychology too, there's a lot of stuff about mirroring and about all your relationships mirror you. And anyone with Gemini rising, this is a very direct, this really is like looking in that mirror. How is any partner you're sharing time and space with, how are they reflecting back to you some of your passion or your frustration? Because there's no doubt about it that whatever you're feeling, it's going to impact your relationship. So it's just a huge way of getting information and then understanding where you need to make adjustments and tweaks, which you have the possibility of doing at the full moon.
Beautiful. Okay, so we're going to move on now to those of you with Cancer rising. This puts the Gemini full moon in your 12th house, and the 12th house is really, it's a tricky house to talk about. It's considered the hidden house. We can think of it as our unconscious area. So what is being reflected here? What story, since Mars has been retrograde in this house for you since October 30th, Mars has been retrograde, you're rewriting some story about your old patterns of your unconscious mind. So where's the frustration in there?
Yeah, and I like that you said this is the place of hidden things, because one way this might play out is something that is blocking you, but you don't really know what it is, and it's causing you a lot of frustration. And the reality is, when that's happening, when there's something behind the scenes that you just can't quite understand or kind of grapple with physically, the only thing you can really do is surrender to it, is kind of go, okay, you know, step back and like give yourself a little bit of a witness space. You know, it's in yoga, we talk about that as witness consciousness. When you step back so you can just witness what's happening, that's what you're going to need to do here to kind of have an understanding, because the more you try to put your foot on the gas, the more irritated and frustrated you're going to be, because it's this unseen thing. And that the key is to not make it an enemy, because it can be hidden enemies.
Right.
The key is to take the foot off the gas, do a little bit of the surrender stuff, and then just ask yourself, like, what do you need to reevaluate? You know, what do you need to kind of look at, and what adjustment can you make if that's what's happening? And so that you can go with the energy that the universe is providing you through this 12th house, rather than fighting this huge thing you can't even see.
Right. You know, it's so interesting. The 12th house, if you think about that, Mars and Moon, which is this really explosive emotional energy here, and it's in that hidden place, and you can think of it as being this frustration, and yeah, you can't quite see it. How can you shift that into passion and, you know, really being passionate about what you can't see?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, I think it's kind of like being in like trying to swim across a river. If you try to fight the current, you're going to drown. But if you swim with the current, you're going to get where you're going a whole lot faster.
Right.
So I think it's that.
Yeah, the frustration comes in when you're battling against it.
Yeah, because if you, I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's not like Mars is going to go away. It's going to just transform it into a more, you're rewriting the story of how you use and utilize your passionate emotions.
Yeah. Yeah, and because it's a full moon, first of all, it's a little bit of a test. Like, it's like an opportunity to kind of go, okay, well, how have I been doing? Because Mars has been going through this house for a while. Yeah. So this lets you see if you have really intense emotions, which is going to be pretty likely, to see what they are, because they're really kind of a litmus test of how have you been doing. And if you're feeling really a lot of anger, it really is time to take a step back, because it's not good for your health. Yeah. And it's not good for people around you either, but it's not in your mental health is a question mark in the 12th house, sometimes your physical health. Yeah. So it's serious, you know, like take it seriously. Yeah. At the same time, one of the, ironically, the ways through that is to have a little more fun in your daily routines, because you've got Sagittarius in your 6th house. So it's time to like just have a little more of a good time, like relax a little bit, lighten up in that area of routines. I mean, do the routines, but have fun, like get some more levity in there.
What I think, for those of you with Cancer rising, I think the important thing is to have a huge bonfire for this full moon. Really, you know, it's like that explosive energy behind the scene. Just let it burn it out. I like that. Okay. Yeah, so here we're going to move now to those of you with Leo rising, and this puts the Gemini full moon into your 11th house, which is the area of community. I really think of it as, where we receive from the larger community. So since Mars has been retrograde here since October 30th. It's been in this house since August something, but it's been retrograde since October 30th. And if you haven't listened to our Mars retrograde video, it might be a good idea to do that. this is, you've been really working in this area to rewrite your own ideas of what community means to you. And at this point, it brings your emotions to that story that you're rewriting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a good time to tune into how you're interacting with the community.
Yeah.
Maybe you've moved and you have a new community, or maybe there's something else going on. But I think it's really important to think about what things you are passionate about, and are these community projects, or are you feeling more frustrated about something that you care about? And really, it's about opening up the door to allow more support in, and allow, if it is a community project, to let more people in, tell them about it, so that you can get more support, so you can open that door, because the more people you have supporting a project like that, the better. If you're feeling frustrated, it's definitely time to take a look at, well, why? What's behind that? Do you have unrealistic expectations or something like that? Take that into account. That's a really important time to start thinking about it.
Yeah. And so you may be feeling a lot of frustration around community. You may be feeling a lot of passionate involvement. And if you are feeling more on the frustration side, I think really utilizing the fun of giving. From the sun in the 5th house, that's where we give love, the 11th where we receive it. So there's a lot of energy to just kind of joyfully give that will allow that frustration, I would think, to shift into more of a just passionate engagement with that community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's really important.
Okay, so let's move on to those of you with Virgo rising. This is putting the Gemini full moon into your 10th house, which is career, vocation, how you show up in the outer world. Mm-hmm. So since October 30th, Mars has been retrograde in this area. You've been rewriting a story of who you are in the outer world, what your vocation is, how you express yourself in that area. And now there's a lot of energy here. And your emotions are really kicked in. You may be feeling a lot of frustration in this area, or a lot of passion in this area. And what are you going to do with it, Jennie?
What are you going to do with it?
I don't know.
It's helpful with the full moon to think of this as a little bit of a litmus test, because Mars has been in that area for such a time, as you mentioned. This is a little bit of like, well, how are you doing? Because your emotions tend to be heightened during a full moon. The moon symbolizes emotions. And so this is a really important time to check in and really understand what's happening. And if you are feeling frustrated, if you are feeling the more negative emotions of this, it's time to really dig in and ask why, and see what adjustments you can make to change that energy, because there's a lot of good to be harnessed here. I mean, this is a good time to take that into more of an excited or motivated area, and see if you can turn that energy around, because it's very important. And the energy's there no matter what. So the question is, are you going to try to use it for something that you need help with, something that you need to apply more energy to? And the other thing too is, like, when this is feeling a little, if that's feeling like a lot, then you always got to tap that Sagittarius part, because we're in Sagittarius season. So that's the 4th house of family. So that means something at home that you're enjoying, that gives you enjoyment. To dig more into that, give yourself a little bit of a pause to work on that other end in your career.
So there's something in the area of home and family that can really help you to shift that frustration into a more passionate expression. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. So now let's move on to those of you with Libra rising. And this is going to put that Gemini full moon into your 9th house of worldview. You can think of that house as education, travel, all the areas that really expand your understanding of the world, other cultures, that kind of thing. So this is the area where Mars has been retrograde since October 30th. You might want to go back and listen to our Mars retrograde video where we talk a lot about that. But, bottom line, this is an area where the story is changing. You are rewriting what you believe on a large level. Your worldview is changing right now. And at this point of the full moon, this can be a very volatile and frustrating. You might be kind of changing your worldview in a way that you're like, oh, no. Do I have to change? Or you might be passionately excited about a new view of the world that you're seeing. It can go either way, I think, here.
Yeah, I think it's an important time of learning whatever you have Libra rising, because there's such a focus on, the worldview is also just how you learn and how you think for yourself, but also kind of those higher teachers that are helping you gain more wisdom, essentially. So ideally, this would be a great place, have a lot of excitement and a lot of energy in this place right now. But that full moon shining a light in there is really going to let you see what kind of emotions or emotional baggage perhaps you've incorporated into that. Or maybe it really is just this, clear channel to your emotional source. So this is the time to figure that out. Is it more frustrating or is it more exciting? And if it's frustrating, it's time to kind of tap into the Sagittarius place in your life, which is just the simple humor with sibling, friends, and neighbors. Like, just share some jokes, because that can help you uplift that other part. So that is a way to work with it. If you're already in the, like, I'm pretty excited about things, like, great, like, this is great news. You've got some more time to work with it. So carry on.
Develop your humor around your worldview. I love that. That's lovely. Okay, are we ready?
Yeah.
Moving on to those of you with Scorpio rising. This is going to put the Gemini full moon right there into your 8th house. The 8th house is a challenging house. In this area, Mars has been retrograde since October 30th. So there's just this kind of idea that you've been kind of working on something in that area anyway, and now it's imbued with a lot of emotion. The 8th house is other people's values, other people's baggage, other people's resources, other people's money and baggage. It's a tough house. It's where we really grapple with how we interact with other people on really deep issues.
I sometimes wonder too, with Scorpio rising, if this might be this is a pretty challenging issue for Scorpio rising, because they have this Gemini in their 8th house, which is just your mindset and how you think about other people. And so there's going to be a lot of effort that needs to be put into developing and maturing that part of yourself. So I think there could be a real tendency with Scorpio rising, to think of yourself as being really complex and kind of difficult to understand or whatever, but other people are pretty simple. And that's absolutely not true. There's this need to kind of extend that understanding of your own depth, to recognize that everybody else around you too has a lot of depth and a lot of complexity. And once you kind of realize that as a Scorpio rising, then you are, of all people, have a wealth to draw from to understand that complexity. But it's all about your mindset and training your mind. So with Mars and the moon there, this is a great opportunity to see, well, how are you doing? Like, do you feel good about your relationships with people when they get into their deeper, darker stuff that you struggle with or they're struggling with? Or, like, are you handling that well? Do you have good boundaries? Or is it more just this total source of irritation and annoyance, which it could well be in the 8th house? Like, that would be a normal human experience.
Right. Absolutely. But it could, it is a time when you are really having to reevaluate how you function with other people's values. This could be a time that you could really tap into getting excited about understanding people, and kind of pulling a little bit away from thinking of them as being more simplistic than you. I love that you said all of that. That is so good for the Scorpio rising, to really learn to really understand that their own depth and complexity is not limited to them.
Yeah. And that, actually everybody's got Scorpio somewhere.
Right. Everybody's got Scorpio somewhere. And
Yeah.
I think it's probably the biggest thing for me personally. The biggest reason I got so into studying astrology for my whole life is because it really enabled me to see the complexity of other people.
Yeah.
It's,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, all of us are on this planet. We're all living really complex lives.
Yeah.
We really are. Okay. So enough of that. Let's move on to those of you with Sagittarius rising. Mm-hmm. This puts the Gemini full moon right in your 7th house, which is the house of partners, business partners, intimate partners, one-on-one kind of equal-based relationships are what the 7th house is about. So where's your frustration right now? What is it over the period of time while Mars has been retrograde since October 30th in this 7th house? There's been a lot of reworking your own ideas of what relationship means to you, what you want, what you need in relationship. What is the story you've been telling yourself about relationship? And now at the full moon, your emotions are really tied up in what it is you're rewriting here, what story you're engaged in.
Yeah, there's a lot of volatility suggested here with the Mars moon together. And that's, I mean, the full moon is a fleeting moment. So it really is just a moment to kind of take a look and go, oh, like what is happening in my partnerships? How am I feeling? And this can be, again, this could be your marriage, your intimate partner. That's sort of the most typical one we think of in this house, but not everybody's married. It also can be your business partners. And it also can just be anyone that you're in a one-on-one encounter with throughout the course of your day. I mean, it really can play out in a lot of different ways because all of our relationships are mirrors to us. Yeah. And this is really going to mirror back to you. Maybe if you have a sense of inadequacy as a partner, like that's going to get mirrored back to you, you know, or if you're feeling like things are really spicy right now with your partner, like you've got Mars in the 7th house. So awesome. Like enjoy it. Like if it is spicing up your sex life, your intimacy, that's really great because
that's the ideal.
Yeah, that's the ideal. Because with Gemini in your 7th house for Sagittarius rising folks, like there could be a little bit of a tendency for that relationship to really live in the intellectual space. But this is a great time to bring in more passion. You know, this is a great time to go, you know, let's just go with this because you might be feeling more than usual. And I'd say that's great.
Yeah. Really incorporating passion in your intimate partnerships is the perfect way to use this. And really incorporating humor and it being in Gemini, you know, do some humorous role play and have some fun. I mean, this could be a really great thing. And the option of that or the anger and frustration. See if you can go along the line of passion and fun here.
And tap that Sagittarius energy in the 1st house to bring, as Laurie, as you're saying, like to bring that humor in. But you have more of a sense of humor about yourself. You know, don't take yourself so seriously. Just
exactly.
Let that show up.
Don't take yourself so seriously. Have fun. Okay, now we're going to move on to those of you with Capricorn rising, and this puts the Gemini full moon into your 6th house, which is the area of day-to-day routines, healthcare, like dietary routines, whatever routines, healthcare. That's where you may be feeling a lot of frustration. You've been working for some time with Mars retrograde in this area. You've been working on trying to maybe develop new routines. And this period at the full moon is kind of showing you how you've done with that and putting your emotions into play. How are you doing with that?
And I think the 6th house there, I mean, it does its habits and routines, as you say, and also the potential for injury, or the places where you
with
don't
Mars.
really, like where you're not able to take care of yourself for whatever reason. And just with Mars there, I just see the potential for, and the moon, just being careful, being cautious, in terms of like evaluating how things are doing. If you're feeling really aggravated, then what you want to do is figure out how to find the appropriate activity to kind of burn that energy off in a good way, but not in a destructive way, because that's where health issues are going to come in. This also just is a time when you just need to change up what you're doing, because maybe there's some things, that habits you have that aren't so great. And it's time to shift those. So, I mean, those kinds of topics are going to come up.
I really, using that Gemini idea of curiosity, what is it that you can really, that will really support both your emotions and your physicality here?
Yeah,
because both of those are what's engaged, and you want to find the passionate excitement and get yourself out of the frustration of it.
Yeah. And at the full moon, it's a moment in time. So it's the time to really evaluate this. Like, you've had a couple weeks to work with this during Sagittarius season, and you've had a couple months with Mars in that house. So what has come to light during that time? And then also, like, you have that sun in the 12th house, that Sagittarius sun. So this is that kind of off the cuff, like, hidden sense of humor that might come up and can really help you have that. Sometimes it's that kind of like almost macabre sense of humor, that it just this, I don't know, highlights things that are normally really hard to deal with, but it can help you kind of let go and surrender to the moment and just take care of things that are going to be better for your health.
Like George Carlin kind of humor.
Maybe.
All right. So let's move on to those of you with Aquarius rising. This puts the Gemini full moon in your 5th house, which is really, it's the area of creativity, where we give of ourselves most freely. And you've had that Mars going through this area, doing its retrograde dance here since October 30th. It turned retrograde. So what is it that in that area you've been really grappling with, trying to figure out how to express your creativity, and how are you doing with that, kind of rewriting that idea? How are you doing? Are you in a state of frustration around your career, or are you feeling a lot of excitement? There's some work to be done here.
Yeah.
At this
time. This could be, I mean, I could see this manifesting as some kind of block to your creative efforts, something that you're trying to do, and maybe you started the project and then you're like, I don't know. It does a little bit of a back and forth with the Mars retrograde. And then the moon here, it's just going to bring it right into focus, right at this full moon on December 7th. It's going to bring whatever that thing is into focus. Also have to note, this could be something to do with your children. If you have children, this could be some way in which you're trying to work with something that one of your children's doing, or and that there might be a sense of frustration or whatever. And now is going to be a really good time to kind of check yourself, because it's going to really show up with that full moon, and just kind of check, like, what's, if you're feeling frustration, see if you can get to the root of why, like what exactly that is, and how you can help, if it is indeed a child or your creative project, either way, trying to move that into an area of more motivation and excitement, and help shift that energy in a more positive way, because it's not going to go away. You have to use it. So you want to use it for something that's helpful and constructive rather than not.
Right.
Yeah.
So how would you think, with the sun in the 11th, how does that support that 5th house in this case?
I just think of that as the sun is in Sagittarius, so we're looking at positivity and humor and optimism. So this is go out and do something with your community. Go out and do something with groups of friends. Maybe this is some way that you, that you well, allow your community to support you, but that might also mean like going and volunteering and like helping out in the soup kitchen for a day and like trying to bring more levity to that group of people, you know.
Yeah, I'm thinking, you know, if it's you brought up children there with that fifth house. If you're struggling in a state of frustration with your children, maybe one of the ways to really turn that around into real passionate emotional engagement is to bring them to help with you at the soup kitchen, or you know, really allowing the community, the levity of the community to support you in that struggle. You know, bring the kids to the tree lighting ceremony in your town, or you know, whatever, allowing that community to really be the support of your
like
creativity or your children. That's awesome.
There's something about having to share with other people sometimes, you know, that you just can really get you out of yourself. And this is a great example of that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's move on to those of you with Pisces rising. And this puts the Gemini full moon and Mars in the fourth house of home and family. So you may be feeling a lot of frustration or a lot of emotional passion around your home or around your family.
Yeah, and as we talk about, I always think that this could be that home renovation project that's driving you crazy. Yeah, and it feels really frustrating. And in which case, then the answer might be to pick up and go and work somewhere else and get a break from your house at the full moon. But it also could be just frustration or just a lot of intensity or perhaps even volatility just in your family life, in any with your family members. And we all know it's possible for these things to come up during the holidays. I mean, the holidays are not an easy time for so many people. Yeah. So it could be that. And the key piece is, as we have the full moon, is to let that kind of illuminate what is happening. If you're feeling frustration, notice that, work with it, ask yourself why, see if you can get a little space and look into it. If you are feeling excitement and motivation, great, you know, let that kind of feed into the career part of your life as well, because the sun in Sagittarius is up there in your house of career. So those just a couple thoughts. What do you think, Laurie?
Well, I'm just thinking about Mars having been retrograde, you know, since October 30th, Mars went retrograde. So, you know, you might want to watch our video about the Mars retrograde. We talked about this a lot, but there's been, in this area of home and family, you've been really trying to develop a new way of looking at your home and family anyway. And it probably has not been easy over these past, whatever, since October 30th. There's been some challenge there of coming to a new understanding of home and family. And now the emotions are right on it. And it kind of is showing us, how you've done so far with this, and what you need to, how you need to shift it right now. How your emotions coming into it are showing you how to bring passion and excitement rather than so much frustration. And using, like you keep saying, with that Sagittarius, with the sun in Sagittarius, bringing the levity and the humor of the outside world into your home. You know, if this is a lot of volatility around your family or a project at home, maybe you just need to go to a party somewhere, go out in the world, get out away from it for a little while, and then bring that energy of the Sagittarius, the humor, bring that home.
Yeah, because that Mars retrograde, it's making such a statement about just giving something space. Taking a pause, having some space. So I like that. That's great.
All right. I think we have finished with these. And anything else you want to say before we close it down?
Just get out and see if you can see that full moon. It's going to be in the East Coast. It's going to be at 11 o'clock at night. So it's going to be pretty bright and shiny up there. So take a look.
And the other thing is that now, after the sun goes down, you can see Mercury. That's right. Go out, and the sun, I don't know about where any of you are living, but here in New England, oh my goodness, it's ridiculous how early the sun goes down. It is dark. Anyway, it's dark way too early, but it means you can see Mercury in the evening sky.
Yes. Nice.
So go see that. All right. Thank you so much, Jennie. And we'll talk at the next new moon.
Thanks, Laurie. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.